Hola y bienvenidos a Peruvians of USA, Peruanos de Estados Unidos, un podcast en español, inglés y spanglish donde compartimos las diversas historias del inmigrante peruano. Mi nombre es Natalie Sofía y soy una chica peruana que vive en los Estados Unidos por más de 20 años. Welcome to Peruvians of USA, the podcast in Spanish, English, and Spanglish where we share the diversity of the Peruvian immigrant experience. My name is Natalie Sofía, a fellow Peruvian living in the US for more than 20 years. So let's get started. Season 6 of Peruvians of USA is proudly brought to you by Alpa Foods. Start your day with a burst of energy, productivity, and positivity by embracing a morning routine that includes a flavorful cup of Peruvian coffee. I love kicking off my day with journaling and savoring a cup of Alpa Foods' signature coffee. They also offer superfoods like rich nutrient quinoa, energizing maca, antioxidant-packed cacao, and naturally sweet lugma powder. These products are a true celebration of our heritage and a boost to your well-being. Support a brand that values quality, sustainability, and culture. Visit alpafoods.com and taste the tradition in every bite. That's ALLPA Foods. And here's something special just for our Peruvians of USA listeners. Use the coupon code PeruviansUSA at checkout and get 15% off your entire purchase. Don't miss out on this exclusive discount and bring the taste of Peru into your home today. This season of Peruvians of USA is brought to you by Ana Isabel Photography. Are you looking for a photographer who can capture your professional and personal piece of history? Look no further. Ana Isabel specializes in events, headshots, and family portraits, helping you show up as your best self in every shot. With her expert eye and attention to detail, Ana ensures that each photo captures your essence, making the experience seamless and stress-free. Since 2019, Ana has been capturing my family photos, first with my parents and now with my husband and little one. Every session has created memories we'll cherish forever. Whether it's stunning wedding photos or timeless family portraits, Ana has the skill and expertise to bring your vision to life. Don't wait. Visit AnaIsabelPhotography.com today to book your session and start creating memories that last a lifetime.
Hey everyone, before we get into today's episode, I want to give a quick content note. This conversation includes a brief mention of suicide as part of a personal story shared by my guest. While it's not the focus of our discussion, I wanted to give you a heads up in case you'd like to skip ahead or take care while listening. That said, this episode is a powerful story of resilience, second chances, and breaking barriers. I'm so grateful to Juan for sharing his journey from growing up with a physical difference and facing tough circumstances to building a successful career in the mortgage industry and founding his own company. I hope his story inspires you as much as it inspired me. Let's get into it.
Juan Rodas, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you and to learn more about your story. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. Juan Rodas, CEO and co-founder of New Story Lending. We are a national lender licensed across the country, independent mortgage bank.
Thank you. And so just to give the audience a little bit of background, how you and I know each other, we actually go to the same CrossFit, Tyson's Corner, which is co-owned by my husband, Marcus Luther. So tell me a little bit about CrossFit and Juan and how you two met.
Yeah, no, I started there. I mean, honestly, it's probably been like 10 years ago at this point. I really enjoyed it. I like the fact that it's something different every day. It's challenging. And you got the weightlifting mixed with the cardio, and the cardio is what I hate. So you got to do things that you hate, right? I'm trying to be there more often than not so that Marcus doesn't get mad at me.
Not a lot of Latinos in CrossFit. So does that ever stick out to you? I know for me as a Latina in lifting weights, and sometimes I post in my personal Instagram, like people who are not exposed to that world, they're like, what are you doing?
I think it's a cult, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's funny whenever I go to CrossFit gyms or even rock climbing, when they see my hand, they're like, how the hell are you doing all of that? Or how are you picking these things up and yada, yada, yada. So it's always an interesting conversation starter, to say the least.
So you mentioned your hand. Let's start there. What do you mean? Tell us.
Yeah. No, I can kind of get into that. So I guess I'd say that's probably the somewhat of the beginning of the story, so to speak. So my family migrated here from Ecuador. I'm one of a very few that was born in the United States. I have an older brother, older sister, a bunch of cousins. They were all born in Ecuador. But for whatever reason, I'm the only one in the family that was born with a deformity. And so my left hand is born deformed. Some of the fingers are a lot smaller. It's always been a challenge in my life, been a barrier. It's just something I've been breaking through. Growing up with that kind of thing, it's challenging, right? Not just physically challenging in terms of like you learn to adapt to pick things up and do things. I've got to the point now where like I
You're doing
deadlift
CrossFit?
500 pounds, right? So it's like you adapt over time, but it's a challenge, right? And part of the challenge and the struggle is like, the I hate to use the word bullying, but the bullying and stuff that you go through when you're a kid, it's because kids can be mean, right? It's like one of those things where my daughter was growing up and I was like, walking with her, trying to hold her hand and she wouldn't hold my hand and she'd be like, ew, you know what I'm saying? What's wrong with your hand? And my nieces and nephews would poke fun at it or like run away at little parties and laugh at me. And it's funny now, right? And I make a joke out of it. In fact, I'll go and I'll say it's a magic trick and I'll act like I ripped my fingers off and like freak them all out at parties. But when you're a kid, can you imagine, right? Like you are the one getting that treatment from others. And so I got in a lot of fights over it when I was a kid. My brother and my cousins would get in fights for me, for that matter. Around my brother's 7 years older than me. So I was always that little guy hanging out older kids. And so quite literally kids that were 7+ years older than me was be sitting there making fun of me. And, it's one thing to defend yourself when you're 30 and somebody's 37 or something, but when you're 4 and somebody's 11 or whatever, like it's different. Those things were definitely a challenge and made me grow. That was one of the things that kind of made me grow up faster. The other thing about it was I didn't really have much, growing up. We just lived on apartments and a bunch of people living in the same place. And I was the majority of my childhood till I was about 13. But my parents, because they didn't have any money to support me, we didn't have insurance or any of that kind of stuff. The Shriners Hospital for Children, which I have tons of respect for, the one that I went to was in Philadelphia. I'm out here in Northern Virginia. And they used to actually drive me and my family to
Wow.
there or check my hand, and it was all free, for my family. I would go to this hospital and it was, I mean, kids were like really messed up, like really messed up. Like they didn't have, like when you would go to, you have kids now, you take your kids to the doctor and there's like a little waiting room. Sometimes the kids will be playing. Well, imagine that. I'd go in that and there'd be kids with no arms, no legs, like really physically like messed up, right? And I'd show them and it was almost funny because it was nothing in comparison. But back home, I was extremely unique. And when I would go into this hospital, my situation was not as bad as theirs. And so, I think it put something in my brain really early on in life. And I'm talking about when I was 3 years old, 4 years old, like those memories where it's like, okay, somebody has it worse than me. And so like, I just kind of, I think subconsciously started applying that mindset to just life. I've never been one to, I share my story now, but it's not out of pity. It's more out of showing people that there's a path and you can get through challenges of life.
Yeah. How did your parents help you navigate I don't want to call it a disability if you don't call it that, but like, how did they help you navigate that? Because I can only imagine the psychological toll it took on you growing up and being made fun of and bullied. And I think sometimes part of the Latino culture is like we tease each other, right? And it's kind of normal. It toughens you up a little bit, but at the same time, there is some impact to your psyche that happens. And then also, how did your parents come about? How did they find out about this resource for you and to help?
Yeah. So uh, I'll start actually another part of it that was interesting. When I was born, I was actually almost 12 pounds. I literally looked like I was 1 years old when I was born. There was this whole situation with my mother's sugar and stuff like that, whatever was happening. She may or may not have been smoking and doing things like that. But I think it's one of those things where like, you don't, especially back then, there wasn't,
You don't know.
things were more normal to do things like that. Not only was I very big, but then I was like, oh my God, he has his hand deformity. So what else could be possibly wrong with it? I also had really bad asthma when I was a kid to the point where I'd have to sleep on the couch sitting up and it'd be crazy nights of that type of stuff. I had a lot of health issue challenges or whatever. So they were always extremely supportive. My grandmother lived with us at home. So it was my dad, my mom, my grandmother, who basically like my second mom. She's always lived with us. So I think it was just more of a support thing. I think in our communities, there is that type of support and love amongst family. But, it was challenging in their own right too, because part of how people would conceive it is they assumed that your mom was smoking crack or something like that. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. So I think it was while they were trying to be supportive of me, I think they were probably also dealing with the fact of people judging them and possibly assuming that they did something wrong that caused that to happen to me. You know what I'm saying? And to my knowledge, till this day, no one really is clear on how it happened or what happened with it. But look, my family always treated me normal. Never, ever, ever tried to be like, he couldn't do this or do that. They put me in sports. They never didn't let me do something. My cousins and all the boys that we play football or baseball or whatever the case is, and no one ever, tried to act like I was handicapped. Pretty normal. You know what I'm saying? And now, even nowadays, I was with my brother this weekend and we were somewhere and he was like, we walked out of the store and he's like, man, you see that dude just staring at your hand? And I was like, dude, I didn't even notice. For
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's get into the teenage years. How I know you mentioned that going to the hospital in Philly,
Yeah.
you started to, notice that, hey, I don't have it the worst. And somebody will always have it worse than you, right? And so kind of have that perspective. Did you carry that perspective to your teenage years?
Yeah. Look, I think that while the hand situation is more present in the sense that people can see it, and so there's obviously questions about it. I think the things that people don't see and the things that happen in people's lives or that people internalize sometimes can be the things that are the most challenging to overcome. Right. And so like the hand thing just kind of was what it was, but there was substantial amount of other things that occurred growing up that made life just overall challenging. Back to the financial thing, because my parents didn't have much, they had to work a lot. Working a lot came with not being around as much. And so that when you're younger, not because they didn't want to, but because they were working, you start getting into trouble. You start experiencing different things. I was that younger one hanging around with the older group. And I just started doing older things. And, I hate to say it, but like statistically speaking, just got involved in criminal activity, things that like come with coming from the communities that we come from. It's, you end up going to more funerals than you do go to graduations, right? And people die young and all those things. I say my first true kind of wake up call or kind of pivotal moment in life where it frankly took away my innocence is probably when I was around 10-ish. And my brother, I've always been close to him, and he had a girlfriend at the time. He had gotten her pregnant while they were in high school, and they were still in high school at that time. And I was extremely close to her. Unfortunately, she decided to take her life. She took her life while pregnant, with my nephew, fully pregnant. And that was extremely, extremely challenging. I remember it was during that blizzard, a huge blizzard that we had in the 90s, and we got the phone call about it. And, obviously it has impacted my family. It's impacted my brother substantially. It's impacted me. It's a reason why I don't take my kids to funerals that are open caskets when they're too young. Like it's embedded in my brain to see her there with, they had extracted the baby and the baby was there with the casket. It was a crazy situation. And I felt like it really kind of stole my innocence. And I was already somebody who was exposed to way more things than they should have been when they were young out a big moment in life. And I think you start to care less about life. It's like when people get shot or whatever, they start to think they're invincible. And it's like one of those things where you start to see situations like that and it starts to hit you in a different way. And so that was a big pivotal moment in my life. And then shortly thereafter, I just kind of started doing more grown up things, right? Like I stopped asking my parents for money literally when I was like 13 years old. And why they didn't like think to, wonder why I was coming in with fresh Jordans and all this other stuff, right beyond me. But it's also because again, they were just trying to provide. And they, they also come from South America where like things are a lot faster. They come from like a city. They come from where kids are out in the streets and it's normal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I just think when they came here, I hate to say it, it was just somewhat normal. Not that I got into just a lot of shit I was doing at that time.
I mean, I was born in Peru and I came to the US when I was 10 years old. And being a 10-year-old in Peru was basically a teenager. You're basically a teenager. And when I came to this country, they're
Exactly.
like, you're a kid. So
Exactly.
so it was definitely kids in Latin America grow up a lot faster and you're doing things a lot quicker. And so maybe to your parents, they're like, this is normal. How did you process that the life event to your brother, to your family? Did it make you mad at the world? Did it make you like mad at her? Like, I
Yeah.
guess I'm trying to understand, like, how does a 10-year-old process that big life event?
Yeah. I don't think it's fully processed for anybody yet. I mean, it's something that my brother and I still talk about, you know what I'm
Mhm,
saying? To each other at
mhm,
least, right?
mhm,
Or, and it's not fully, so it was one of those things where, yeah, you get mad, you get sad, you don't understand. It wasn't until she had like, there was like letters and stuff like that that she had written that like, didn't, it was only recently that, started to get rid of those types of things. And it's like,
okay,
so it's a long, 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 for anybody who's gone through that, or it's a long drawn out process. I would say that you never fully heal from it, but
right.
you learn from it from the perspective of, you try to appreciate life as much as you can a little bit more. And sadly, like that was a situation where somebody took their life, but there's been other situations where a lot of them, unfortunately, where I mean, people that I've known since young, keep dying because
Mhm,
people can't get out of being caught up, in that kind of life. She wasn't necessarily in that kind of thing, but she was just in a situation where, probably she felt, there was no way out or whatever the case is.
mhm,
So look, I just think it's something that you take it one day at a time. You try to do a lot of good things in life, try to
mhm,
overcome and not put yourself in that situation. I think over time in life has had an addictive personality. And
mhm,
so my addictive personality, I've applied to positive things at this point in my life. And I
mhm,
tried to stay busy, whether it's the CrossFit gym or whether
mhm,
it's at work or
mhm,
whatever the case is.
mhm,
And my therapist probably wouldn't love me for that, but it's like one of those, like, I got to stay busy to keep my mind engaged, to try to not let my mind get into those depressing memories or thoughts.
mhm.
At least that's my way of doing
Yeah. Well, I'm not a therapist, so I can't say if that's good or bad.
it.
But I definitely understand
Yeah,
being highly functional to
that's right.
to
That's right.
to to get over some of the trauma. So tell us how you ended up now where you are, which is someone
Yeah,
who is a co-CEO, co-founder, who got his bachelor's, has his master's degree in finance, I believe, from Johns
yeah,
Hopkins. Again, not a small feat, right? So from very humble beginnings to this point, how does that happen? Part of the reason I wanted to interview you is because I think sometimes in our community we think that you got to do everything right from the beginning. I certainly
yeah,
had that perspective, as a child immigrant coming here to the US, I can't mess up. I can't mess up because, I am the safety net of my family and I have to
yeah.
do everything right. And so with that comes a lot of other stress and other, things that I have to deal with. But hey, that's not the case, right? Like, so tell us, where did your life take a turn?
Yeah, so I would say that it was I'll give you the high level of it for sure, but it's been a long journey, right? I'm 39, be 40 later this year. And it's one of those, like, I look back and I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have ever thought way back then that I would be where I am now. Even like, it's so weird. I'll go places and like, I remember I used to do bad stuff and now I'm at that same place or nearby and I'm doing positive, and it's like the weirdest,
Mm,
strangest feeling. And it's bad. And it's almost like I keep it to myself because like people would never understand, like, man, did you, when I was on this block 20 years ago, I did some wild shit. And now I'm like here, from a business owner perspective. But yeah, I mean, look, back to, really my teenage years, like I said, I stopped asking my parents for money when I was 13. And, I got involved in, criminal, kind of activities and did what I had to do to make money. And then I ended up having a kid when I was in high school. So I found out when I was in 16. When I found out, I remember the counselor at my school told me to drop out of school. And it was a black dude. It was like minority, just like me, right? And the fact that that was his guidance
mm,
is wild to me. And I think back, like, what if I would have listened to him? You know what I'm saying? And his thing was, oh, well, like, I see what you're doing. You might as well just drop out of school, go get a job, and how to take care of your family. And it wasn't out of a lack of intelligence. So when I applied myself, I remember one semester I almost applied myself in high school. I think I was in ninth or 10th grade and I got on the AV honor roll. Never had done that in my life. And I was like, I hate to say it, but it was very easy for me at that time. And I think that a lot of the people that come from our communities, like sometimes it's just not cool to get good grades or
Yeah.
stuff like that and hang out with certain crowds. And it was even more eye opening when I went to the AP honor roll meeting or whatever. I'm like walking to the classroom through the halls, and the administrators thought that I was trying to skip school. They're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm going to this thing." Even they didn't believe that I was walking over to the thing. And I walk in there and I'm pretty much the only minority, the only Latino that was in there. It was a lot of white folks in there. I mean, to be honest, you know what I mean? It was that's, and they had their own crew. Like it was like the people who always make the AV honor roll crew or whatever. And I felt awkward. Like I went in there with like, my Timbs and my do rag on and you know what I'm saying? And all this stuff. They're like, who the hell is this kid? Right. And frankly, like it kind of made me almost not want to do it. Like, because I was like, I don't want to, like, those are not my friends. Right. Those are not my people. And so I think, you know, well, what I'd say to that nowadays is like, look, you know, if you're a real person, like it doesn't matter, like, if you show your intelligence or not. And so because of that, I kind of was like, you know what, I didn't try to apply myself. Most of the people that I know didn't graduate, from high school. One of my best friends that passed away, just semi recently, he didn't graduate. My other friend ended up getting a GED. A lot of my cousins didn't graduate from high school. And I'm not celebrating that. I'm just saying that's what was normal to me. And no one talked about college. Even when I go to work stuff today, they're like, remember when we were in college? I'm like, no, I didn't. I went to college when I was like 30 years old. I didn't have that experience. Right. And it's like, again, not celebrating it. It was just different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like normalization in these communities that we come from where it's more normal to not go to college. It's more normal to unfortunately go to jail or, people who die or not get good grade. That's just what it is. So that's what it was. And that was really, I continued down that really, I'd say, negative path. I gained a lot of street sense from it. It made myself some things. I just didn't apply it to the wrong. I applied it to the wrong stuff, basically. I applied my smarts to the wrong stuff. But I am somebody who gets really good at things when I put my mind to it. And so I was really good at those things. They were just bad things. And then eventually what ended up happening was I actually got a job in mortgage, but I started in the mailroom. I remember my cousin, I was going to that interview and he was like, hey man, and I always laugh about it, but he was like, yo, you need to leave the gangster in the street. He's like, don't bring that shit to work. He's like, you need to, he was trying to get me to try to get an office job and to change my life. And like, I took the job, but frankly didn't change my life at all. I continued doing what I was doing. It was like a little BS job. I was making no money. I didn't even like, it was nothing in comparison to what I was making in the streets. And so eventually, it's somewhat of a blessing in disguise. Somebody, got in trouble and told them betrayal is a real thing. And it was to my, it wasn't just a random person, you know what I'm saying? At least my assumption is that it wasn't. And that was a tough time in my life where I was like, wow, my life is kind of over. Recidivism is a real thing. I've witnessed it my entire life where people get in trouble, go to jail, get a record, and cannot ever get out of that. They either go right back to what they're doing because that's all society has put us in a situation where you have a record and you can never get out of it. People don't want to give you jobs or opportunities. That's all of that. And a lot of it, what I've realized over time is just the mindset. Now, of course, I was blessed to have people that gave me opportunities, but I also took those opportunities and like completely ran with it.
Right.
So like, yes, you sometimes need the opportunity, but there's plenty of people who just become entrepreneurs when they get out. And it doesn't matter if you have a record at that point, right?
Yeah.
And so, I ended up that happened to me. I ended up, incarcerated for a little while and, it was a challenge. I was young. I really thought that that's what was going to continue to happen. Right. And that was looking back again. It was like everyone goes to jail. Right. It was like, I hate to say it, but it was like almost also normal. It was almost like, oh yeah, like, no one's like, oh my God, he went to, it was like, oh, okay, it's his turn, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, And unfortunately, that's what it was. And then, I was blessed, truly, truly, truly blessed to have, he also just recently passed away. I view him like almost like an angel in my life. This guy named Brian Miller, who was my manager at the time. He could have just turned his back on me. Like, for whatever reason, he saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself at that time in my life. And, he knew I was young. I had a kid I was trying to provide. I was at this almost cross paths in life where I was trying to perform at work, but he knew I was probably not doing the right thing outside. And I think he could probably see the struggle, this life struggle that this young man was having to try to go to the do positive, change his life, but also getting pulled back into the things, I was experiencing. And so, he saved me, and he ended up letting me basically back into work after a while. I mean, this was like almost a year later, right? And like, supported me, helped me through like a work release program that they had at that time. And it was crazy that he even allowed me to do that. And then so I ended up, getting back into that company, and I had a felony at the time because of that. I was like super early 20s. And so I was like 2021, something like that. And again, I thought my life was over, but I was like, you know what, let's take this one day at a time and try to see how this job situation is going to work out. How it was a dramatic financial impact to me because it was making like nothing, working there. But I was like, hey, look, I got a job at least. I ended up staying at that company for 15 years and learned everything that I learned today. I went through every single aspect of that company. Um, what ended up happening was at some point, it was like in my late 20s after I'd been there for a while, another leader of that company approached me and was trying to promote me. And when he was trying to promote me, I had to also then disclose to him my background. And because of that, he could not make me an officer at the time. He could not make me an officer of the company, but he didn't care. And he was like, you know what, dude? And I didn't care. Like, I was like, look, I don't care if you call me the janitor. Like, if you let me do things and compensate me for it, then I'll go with it. He ended up, giving me a promotion. And he actually then encouraged me to go to school. This was the CEO of the company at the time. This was in my late 20s. He encouraged me to go to school. They paid for my school. I ended up going to George Mason University. I ended up getting a bachelor's, and I actually started in community college. I started at Nova. Then I went to George Mason University. A minor in economics, a bachelor's in finance. Back to that, addictive personality. I just kept going. So I was like, as soon as I finished that, I went and got a master's degree from Johns Hopkins University in finance. I then went on to get a certified mortgage banker's designation from the Mortgage Bankers Association, which is a big deal in my industry. I did all of that over probably like an 8 or 9 year period of time. And I did that while having two kids, right? By then I had another daughter. I was working crazy hours, and it's back to that. I needed to stay busy. I knew that if I didn't stay busy, that I would go back to just doing crazy stuff, right?
By then, like, why did you know that, or why did you think you would go back? Like, was it
It's
because?
easy. Yeah, it was just so easy, right? Like when you come, like because, you know, I didn't snitch on anybody when I was younger, right? Like it would have been easy for me to just get right back into what I was doing.
So it was like your baseline in some way.
It really kind of was. And what I stupidly, at least for me, assumed that that's what I was really good at. Then I realized,
This is where I can be somebody type of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. And it was like, but really like, and I'll say this till I'm dead, is like all those street smarts that you learn, you can apply those things
Oh, yeah.
to other things, right? Like some of the smartest business people out there don't necessarily have degrees. Like sadly, why I got a degree, this is actually kind of sad. Why I was like, other than the fact that they pay for it, which is great.
Yeah.
I was so stuck on, well, I have this negative paperwork basically.
Yeah.
When you run my record, I have this negative thing. And I was trying my damnedest to get every positive piece of paper that I could put in front of somebody to say, yeah, I had this one thing, but
To
look, I got
compensate.
things, you know what I mean? I was trying to outweigh. In hindsight, I don't regret going to school, but I realized that people know me for the last 20 some years, and they know my character. They know who I am. They know I'm a good hearted person. I'm a family man, like all those things. So it's like they didn't care about that stuff anyways. Like they didn't. Like after I ended up having to disclose these things, like in more when I ended up opening up, this business, like they didn't care. And it was like, wow, like this whole time I've been so worried that like all these people were going to judge me. And I think it's from a place of like, starting even with the hand, let's just say, like, you always think like, oh, like, like somebody's, got something against me or whatever. And it just really wasn't. And I took all that experience. I mean, look, I was doing presentations on Wall Street, like they had your boy on private jets and like all this crazy stuff, like work related. I was like, I can't even believe that I'm like going and like presenting to these people to try to sell this company. Like I was at that company for 15 years. I ended up helping selling it to one of the largest financial institutions in the entire world. And I was going to Wall Street as a 20-something-year-old kid, presenting as a Latino, the only one I saw around trying to sell this organization. And so I just took all of those skill sets that I just developed over time, eventually applied it to opening up my own thing with my business.
Yeah, that's it's just fascinating to me. Want to reiterate and highlight what you said about the street smart skills can be applied to like Main Street and to like Wall Street. And I agree with you like that some of the smartest people, the smartest business people are not formalized business. They're probably
Yeah.
running other things. I think that's I hope that's a message that somebody like an audience can hear, right? Like we have a lot of street smart. Our community has a lot of street smarts. We are hard workers. We come from like a background that helps us see a lot of the blessings that are available, but it's almost like we have to be able to see ourselves in a different light.
Yeah.
And you cover a lot, and I wanted to touch on a couple things. And we already touched on one, which was like you mentioned, like I had to stay busy because otherwise I was gonna go back because it's
Yeah.
easy, right? And you were given, I guess, like a second chance. You were
Yeah.
given opportunities, right? And I want to say given, but at the same time, I think it was because people really did see your raw talent. So it's not like no es gratis. Like, like that's
Yeah.
what it's like they're getting something back. Like right, the
Yeah. Yeah.
company's getting something back too. Like so I do want us to, as a community, appreciate those opportunities we have, but at the same time, I want to acknowledge that but they're getting something back. The companies are getting something back. It's not a free favor, right? My question to you is like, other people are given second chances too, second, third chances, but they're not able to take it. And so, how can we, as a society, help them take those chances, right? And take those chances and excel. Is it just because it's really that hard? It's just like, hey, you can make more money and it's faster. It's a probably easier life. I don't know. Tell
Yeah.
me.
You just have to stay determined. When me and my business partner opened up this company, we went through an entire branding exercise, which
Yeah.
was right. Felt like therapy on, and and after it, the guy was doing it was like, hey man, um, he's like, you are a barrier breaker, right? Like your whole entire life has been filled with barriers and you've found ways to break through it. And that is through perseverance and those types of things. So I would encourage people to just, I know it's like whatever people say, don't give up. I have proven that by not giving up,
Yeah.
these things can happen. And I've made more money than I ever made in the streets. You just have to kind of stay down that path. And for so long, I was like, I'll never be able to open a business. Boom, I've opened multiple businesses because the mentality and the mindset was like, nah, I'm just not going to give up, not give up. Like I always joke with like Marcus and them at the gym. Like, I'm like, like I'm not the guy that's like, hey, good job, good job. When I'm struggling, I'm like, no, tell me like you're soft. You know what I mean? Like lift it like it's, I'm that kind of person. Right. But it's like, I just think you have to you have to stay strong and you have to kind of keep pushing and don't take no for an answer. I'm proven fact. Even with respect to my records in the state of Virginia, they don't expunge your record, unfortunately, but you could apply for a pardon. I applied for a pardon probably about 7 or 8 years ago and I got rejected. And it was very depressing. You know what I'm saying? I was like, damn, I've done all these things to try to like fix my life and blah, blah, blah. Around me, people had saw that like, hey, like you don't need to prove yourself to anybody, but it was like something that I felt that like I really wanted, right? And about actually this would have been in October of like October of 23-ish, September of 23, I got pardoned. So the governor of Virginia
Oh,
actually
wow.
pardoned me. And it was something I had to, because I proved myself over the last basically 20 years of like, look how I've gotten educated. Look at all the how I've helped communities, how I've helped, even in mortgage today, like how I'm helping, people, et cetera. And so like, I would have never thought that. I know so many people who have gotten caught up in things that like that they're not even thinking like I'm gonna go and do that. It's mindset. You have to, believe that you can achieve the, unachievable and that it will come. And don't just be like, oh, like they rejected me one time. I felt like I got hit by a bus when they rejected me. I almost felt like, damn, like I ain't good enough. I still ain't good enough. Right. And I just kept doing, well, what else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? And I kept just pushing, 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 pushing.
Right.
And that they don't just hand those out like candy. Like
Right.
that's extremely hard to get. And so I'm just, again, if you keep pushing, like you could absolutely do things like that.
It almost seems like you lost your fear of failure, or maybe you don't lose it, but it's controlled. Is
Yeah.
that accurate to say? Like,
Yeah. I've never thought of it like that, but yes. Yeah, absolutely.
it almost seems to me like, well, you know what worst of the worst is, right? Like you've been
Yeah.
there. You're like, well, I was able to come out of that. This business not succeeding the way I wanted to. It's like that's
Yeah.
actually better than where I was before. So it almost seems like that fear of failure is not as present as for others, right? Like I know for me, the
Yeah.
fear of failure growing up it was very big. And so I was strategic, perhaps not to try things where I knew I could succeed to a certain degree, but not push myself too much where like I was at the edge of like a failure. And I think that's a contrast in our story, right? Highlight like how fear of failure for some of us is very present and it limit us and it doesn't
Yeah.
allow us to really reach higher. And I think that's one of the things I really like about your story is that you're like, well, I'm gonna go for things that are hard because I already know what hard on the other spectrum is, right? I did want to touch on other two things. One is like, how have you evolved as a father through all of this experience, right? You're a father of two girls,
Daughters. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
two daughters, and how has your experience um, shaped you as a father
Yeah.
of two daughters?
No, I think at least I hope I've gotten better as a father as I've gotten older. And, I think that for anybody who has a kid as young as I did happens, right? I think when I had my kid, the first one, the older one, she's 22 now. Actually, she's getting ready to graduate from college in like 3 months. I'm super proud of her. I feel like now, hopefully my grandkids and stuff, I hope college becomes a normal conversation that everybody has. So I'm super proud of her, but she's, when growing up, because I didn't have as much, I think, even though my parents tried, like I'm not taking anything away from them, but I always thought that I've never read that book, The Love Languages or whatever, but like
Yes.
I feel like the love languages was like providing or, financial protect, whatever the case is. Like I wanted to financially protect my kid. And so I was like, yo, she had fresh Jordans and she like had crazy like events and parties and like it was always over the top, like everything that we would do for her. And I wasn't around as much because I was young and partying and like in the streets doing what I was doing. And like every Friday, Saturday, I'd be out like club or whatever the case is. And I was stuck in thinking, well, she has everything, especially even that I didn't have. She's not going to be in a situation where she's going to wake up one day and not ask me for money. Like she's going to have everything. And that was such a fallacy because like I realized, her and I have talked, over time that like, that she just wanted my time, you
Yeah.
know, like, and that's something that I give, it's why my parents and us are so close. Like I see my parents all the time. Like they might not have given me all the financial things, but they always showed me love. You know what I'm saying? And they always, were there. And it was one of those things where I unfortunately, I financially provided, but I wasn't there as much as I should have been. And you can't take that back. You know what I'm saying? It hurts. It really does hurt me to even think about it and talk about it. But like, when I ended up having my second daughter, I was more mature, right? Like I had a job, I was now going to school, and I took the time and still try to take the time to like, you know, as much as I can, like focus more on like not the financial piece of it, but the spending time piece. And I think it's been an extreme evolution. I think, even my older daughter told me like, hey, like you're very different than you were. You're very different with her sister than I am with her. And, it hurts to hear that. But at the same time, like I appreciate that she sees that I'm trying. And our relationship has gotten substantially better, don't get me wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
like that's something that I would say that like, you know, when you're young and you have kids, if it happens, like, spend time with those kids, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, what have becoming a father of daughters, or what have your daughters taught you about women?
Yeah.
And not necessarily. And I'm not talking about like in a dating perspective, but like just like
Mhm.
as people, right?
What have they taught me?
Particularly about being a woman and maybe being a woman in America, right? Or like your
Yeah.
daughters as they grow up, the youngest as she grows up to be a woman in America, right? And she's Latina.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think well, I'll start actually before my daughters, I'll start with my mom and my grandmother because I really feel like I have, you know, two mothers, right? Like they've always respect has been a thing and being respectful of your situation. I was always respectful. And so I would say that my kids have, you know, I would say like put a bright light on that. I've seen them in the way that they're able to be respectful and the way that they've grown up. And like it makes me feel proud of that. But even through that, I can see that it doesn't matter if they're respectful or not respectful, that as women, they struggle and they have challenges. You know what I'm saying? In terms of being looked at certain types of ways, assuming that they can't do certain things. And I see it more like I'd say even with my older one, and now it's evolved with the younger one, where the older one I think was more timid and still probably is. And I think that it probably had to do with growing up when I was still very rough around the edges and seeing my brothers and cousins. So she witnessed males being rough in terms of like, just like aggressive. I think that, you know, that taught me that like how much that impacts, people. Right. And I would say that with the younger one, because my person, the way that I was changed, you know what I'm saying? And I was more around and more caring and more that type of thing. It's molded her in a different way where she's more confident. She's gotten, I mean, like, I think she told me one day, she said, yeah, dad, like, I think a woman should be a president. Like just randomly making like comments like that. Like it comes from what I can tell, it comes from a place of confidence and reassurance
mhm.
and the feeling that, yeah, I can do these things. And so I think that, when boys are growing up, I think when you're trying to make them tough and you're trying to do these things, I think that that's natural. But when you try to do that with girls, I think it's different. You know what I'm saying? And I think that both of them have taught me in their personalities, kind of the way you grow up and the way that encouragement and your surroundings and all of that, right? Stuff like really have a true impact in what you end up wanting to be into your future. You know what I'm saying? And like with the older one, that timidness and all those other things, that caringness, now she wants to be, she studied psychology. She wants to be a child therapist.
Wow.
And then the younger one is more of like, artsy business mindset or whatever. But I learn from them both daily. I'm proud of them for sure.
I want to talk about a new storyline. And again,
Yeah.
and kind of touched on the fact you and I, like offline, have talked about this how the US Latinos are the fifth largest GDP.
Yeah.
We have the biggest GDP if you combine the UK, India, France. And so we're driving this economy, right? I mean, now being March 2025, we're still figuring out where this economy is going to go. But I guess I want you to talk about like the vision or the mission of New Story
Yeah.
Lending and then tie that to like US Latinos, I know it's very important for you to educate your customer, right, on like home ownership and all the opportunities there. And unfortunately, our community has been taken advantage of. We were one of the largest populations hit during the financial crisis of 2008. Many of our people lost their home, my parents included. They lost their home in 2008, and so I'm very connected to that story. Can you just talk about that a little bit of like your mission with New Story Lending, and then also where do you see the Latino community going in terms of home ownership in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'd start off by saying that we're a national lender and we truly are a lender. So we're not brokering loans. We close the loans in our names. We have more control, all the underwriting in-house, et cetera. And so because of that, we truly support all communities for that matter by not having restrictions on what we allow. So, for example, FHA, I'll use that as an example. Their guidelines actually allow you to have down to a 500 FICO, for example, right? There's a lot of companies that don't follow that. They have their own internal set of restrictions where they say, no, we're not going to lend to anybody that, for example, has less than a 620 credit score, right? And so not to suggest that only Latinos and people like that, but the reality is that a lot of people that comes from these struggling communities, oftentimes, mostly because of like, they may not understand or they're not as educated on the financial system, they end up having a little bit of challenges with their credit until you can help them through those struggles. Just don't try to provide an additional layer of restriction, right? We're like, hey, look, we follow these things exactly to the T. If you listen to us, we can help you improve your credit, et cetera. Why create it? They already have a barrier to entry. Why create additional barriers to entry by not allowing them to do certain things? So that's a key pillar to what we do, where we really just have what we call in our industry no overlays. And so we allow, exactly what the government allows us to lend on. The other thing that we do is look, I live in the DC area. This is one of the richest areas in the country at this point, right? And so, yes, we can do the $2-3 million loans as well, right? I hate to say it, but the secret's out. Everybody can do them. Okay, it's not a hard loan like when somebody's putting 20% down or whatever the case is, and they have a 800 FICO score. Like anybody can do those loans, right? But and we will do them, right? But our passion, me and my business partner, is to help affordable communities, right? Because those are the communities that we come from, right? My family migrated to this country, didn't have anything. They rented for over 20 years. They basically rented for as long as they could have bought a home. You know what I'm saying? The amount of time. And even till this day, technically speaking, they don't officially own their home because they made their mistakes over time because they didn't understand even after they bought their home, right?
Right.
So we're trying to educate, we're trying to teach people that they can go from renting into owning pretty quickly, that we can do affordable lending loans. There's, manufactured housing out there that you can do. And people think of manufactured housing, for example, as like the house on wheels that somebody's going to drive away. That's just not the reality of what those homes are today. There's actually pretty nice homes that are affordable. There are lower loan sizes. Having 20% down payment is a myth. You can have 3% down, you got 3.5% down. In some instances, you have no money down.
Yeah.
But it's educating them through that, and we're extremely passionate about trying to help those communities because again, it's where we come from, and I think that personally, I think that if you market to a luxury market, that's all you're ever going to get. I know if I was somebody that was struggling and was trying to get a home and I see somebody that all they do is luxury, they would scare me.
Right.
We focus on affordable, but in knowing that the luxury folks know that we can serve them because look, if we're going to work that hard for, the $200,000, $100,000 loan, whatever the case is, that's extremely hard to do, right? How hard do you think, you doing your loan that's $2 million, like think about your level of service. If we can service that client, we can absolutely service luxury market as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it comes truly from a place of passion. We actually just trademarked quite literally the it's breaking barriers to homeownership.
Mm.
Trademarked that. We're extremely proud of it. Funny enough, got trademarked on December 24th, which is, especially like in Latino, that's like when we celebrate Christmas,
That's
right?
when you
So
get your gifts.
I was so excited, right? I got it on that day. There's been so many things, little things like that that have happened to me in life that sometimes I'm like,
That's
man,
awesome.
I feel very blessed, and it's
Yes.
crazy how the world works.
Yes. Yeah, it seems like you're making home ownership more accessible. I also have a master's degree, but when I went through the home ownership process, I was like, what is this?
It can be
It is challenging. It is daunting, especially after 2008. You have a level of distrust of people. At least I did. I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know if you're giving me a good loan. I don't know all these coins. Where are all these fees coming from?
yeah,
Why are so that was like the first time, and then the second time with Marcus. When we bought the
yeah,
house, we're like two college educated people. We're like, and I went through it
yeah,
already. So
yeah,
I can only I have a lot more empathy for my father going through this process back in when he first bought. I think it was the late 90s when he bought his first home. And the second home, which is a home he lost in 2008, it was like an adjustable rate,
mhm,
and that's why he ended up losing it. But he just got taken advantage of, and it's because he doesn't know the language as well, and then he
yeah,
perhaps trusted people that he shouldn't have, and again, like, he's not coming from, like, having gone to school here in the US, having been educated in the US, and so I really applaud the mission and, like, the passion of New Story London because it's needed, our community needs it, and not just Latinos, like you said, but, like, anybody
yeah,
who's coming from a background that has not been exposed to financial markets. So
yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, look, we felt that we created a new story out of the communities that we came from. So we're very passionate about it. And then even like, again, for obvious reasons, like, I want to help the Latino community a lot. I'm fluent in Spanish. You know what I'm saying? And we have resources to help Spanish homeowners that are in Spanish, right? Whether that's people that can speak to them from an educational perspective. But at the end of the day, like what I realized, so my business partner is not a Latino.
Mm,
He's American, right? But he grew up in the same types of communities that I grew up in, right? He was one of probably like the one American growing up in like a minority type of
mm,
community in trailer parks. Except what I realized is that struggle has no color. Poverty and financial issues in life have no color. Even when I used to go out to Philly with my hand thing, like, like these things have no color. It's all about helping the type of people that come from those types of places. And it just so happens, sadly, that a lot of those people are Latinos.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And
yeah,
so very passionate about trying to help that.
yeah. So if you can leave one message to the audience who, it's either thinking this home ownership is a daunting effort or somebody who is trying to, pivot their life to a more positive direction, what message do you have for them?
To just believe, that it can happen, that all things, ultimately happen for a reason. Sometimes those things are bad things, but just taking the bad and flipping it and turning it into good. Those things are, I think, one of the biggest things that I've realized in life, right? Like you get so stuck when something negative happens to you and you feel like you can't do anything with it. And I've proven like, hey, you could take these, what one would imagine to be negative things and turn it into a positive and make something, from yourself. Plus, like, look, I think I've been just very blessed, you know what I'm saying? Just in general, and just like weird little things have happened to me in life. And like, I've started to take notice of when certain connections that I make in life or certain things that happen, I don't just take them at face value. Like I take that and I'm like, there must be a meaning behind
Mm,
this, right? And I try to just go off and run with it. So I'll
yes,
share like
yeah,
a quick story that was like, I'm not like, a religious freak or anything like that, but like something that's happened to me that it was one of those moments where I'm like, wow, like I paid attention to it and like followed signs or whatever you want to call it, right? Like my grandmother, I was at the beach one time. I took my grandmother and my family on a trip, and we hadn't gone on a trip since we were like, since I was like 4 years old or something like that. We didn't go on family trips. Like, it just nobody had money for all that. You know what I'm saying? So like now that I'm doing all right, I was like, you know what? I got everybody. I was like, let's go. Right. So took everybody down to the beach. And I told my grandmother at the time, I said, hey, like I have, like I'm going to step out for some business, during that time frame. This was in North Carolina. I went to Carolina Beach. When I got there, we were at the beach hanging, doing our thing. I was like, all right, look, I got to step out for the day. I'm going to be gone all day. I need to go do some business. I had just started the business at that time. And my grandmother started to walk out the door, and she never does this, but she stopped me and she's like, hey, come over here real quick. And I was like, what's up? And she blessed me. And she never does that ever. I was like, that's weird. She's like, yeah, this is something special. I went and met with this guy that day, and I was talking to him about possibly buying his company. And he is, from what I gather, is a religious person. He doesn't put it out there like that. Right. And so I ended up meeting with him, and we spoke for 4 hours. And I'm not even exaggerating, for 4 hours. And like 95% of it was about how he applied all these positive signs and things that have happened in his life to grow his business. And he's grown an extremely successful business.
Mhm.
And at the time, and he talked about, how God has helped him and all these things. I was just like, oh, okay, I didn't even think about the thing with my grandma. Like, right. I was just like, okay, whatever. It was a great conversation. I took a lot from it, but at the time, again, signs, right? Like I didn't look at it in any kind of big way, but I thought it was weird. I was like, damn, we just spoke for 4 hours, and like I came over here to talk to you about buying your company, and just veered off into this other let. So the next day, I ended up going to a CrossFit gym, actually. And I had been going to that CrossFit gym all week. And every day of that week, there was like a different person that would be, a new coach or whatever. And, they'd be like, hey, who are you? I'd be like, oh, I'm Juan. No, what do you do? I own a company called New Story Lending. I had just opened it at that time. And one day, the next day after that happened, right? So my grandmother had blessed me. This had happened. The next day, I'm leaving the gym, and it was a new coach or whatever. I worked out, left, go to the parking lot. For whatever reason, I don't get in my car and actually just leave. I go to the car, like open the door, like change my shirt, drink of water, like just sit there. And like, I'm somebody who's always on the move. So it was not normal for me to just sit out there per se.
Mhm.
And this dude comes out like 20 minutes later, and it was the coach. And he's like, hey, he's like, has this like really, really like paranoid, like, or not paranoid, like desperate look on his face. And he's like, oh man, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm like, what's up? He's like, I just want to tell you, Juan, that God loves you. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I had this big feeling. He said, I can't explain this feeling that I had
Mhm.
when I met you. And then when you had left, something told me to come outside and look for you. I was worried that you were gone. Like, I know you just started your business. I
Mhm.
know all these things have started for you. And, he was like, basically like telling me like, how he knows I've been through, you know, pain and struggle and things like that. And then he could just see it like in me. But that he was like, he's like, hey, can I, again, I'm not some super religious. He was like, hey, can I pray for you? He sat there and he prayed for me.
Mhm.
I say all that to say any other time in life, I would have not accepted those things. I would have not embraced those things. I'd frankly probably just laugh at them. And it's not just that happens to be like, related to, religion, whatever the case. I just think that in me, I never embraced things. You know what I'm saying? Like back to when I was
Mm.
younger, it was like, hey, you're on the AV honor roll. And I didn't want to embrace the fact that there was these positive things happening. And I would say that like, that's something that I've learned to do over time. And I would encourage people to do, you know what I'm saying? Like pay attention to the things that are around you, accept help when people are trying to give you help, right? Leave your ego at the door. Don't be so prideful that, you know, because that is what slows people down, right? The pride and the I can do this on my own mentality. I think that's also again from our communities, that's a fallacy. Even related back to home ownership. I mean, there's people that rent because they feel like I don't want to go talk to this person, ask them for help and show them all my stuff. And they got to tell me what I'm going to do with my credit score. And they got to tell me what I'm
Yeah.
going to do about. And I think that once you kind of let that go a little bit and realize that there are people out there that are really trying to help you, I wouldn't have got this far if people didn't actually help me, right? So I'm appreciative and I feel blessed.
Wow. I think that that's such a powerful message of letting yourself embrace, love, help. It resonates with me as well because we come from similar communities and you have this pride of like, no, it has to be hard and I have to push through it. And that's how I'm going to know that I'm successful. But no, accept the opportunities, embrace the help you get. There's people out there who don't want anything back from you. Maybe they just want to bless you in this particular way. And
That's right.
I think it's a good message to end it with. So Juan, thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it, for sharing your story. And, hopefully I'll see you at the CrossFit gym.
Thank you so much.
Hey there, if you're a small business owner or entrepreneur looking to reach a proud and growing Peruvian American audience, I'd love to invite you to sponsor an episode of Peruvians of USA. Whether you're just getting started or already established, sponsoring the podcast is a great way to share your story, promote your products, and connect with a community that values culture and connection. We offer simple, culturally inspired sponsorship packages starting at just $50, and every ad includes a shout out on social media and our newsletter. To learn more and see your options, head to visit peruviansofusa.com/sponsors. That's peruviansofusa.com/sponsors. Thank you for supporting this platform and helping amplify our voices.
Thank you for listening to Peruvians of USA. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts. It lets other Peruvians find the show. If you want to hear more from me, you can follow me on Instagram at Peruvians of USA. I'm looking forward to connecting with you there. All right, talk to you soon. Ciao.